This is Ottawa's home for breaking news 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. News Talk 580 CFRA. Here is Rob Snow.
Prime Minister Trudeau is off to Alberta as we speak, as that province's economy falters, layoffs mount, and there are questions about the new Liberal government's commitment to the energy sector and projects like the Energy East Pipeline project. Michelle Rempel joins me on the line now, the Conservative MP for Calgary Nose Hill. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
What message would you like to hear from the Prime Minister today?
I think that if the Prime Minister could put his political ideology aside and show that he cares about the workers in Alberta who've been laid off. And I also hope that he comes away from the visit with an understanding of how severe the situation is. For anyone listening to your show, I mean, there isn't anyone in Alberta who hasn't had somebody affected by this, and it's going to get worse. I mean, people's severances are running out. It's being felt not just in the energy sector, but in, every secondary industry. This is a really severe problem, not just for Alberta, but for the whole country. And I hope that, we don't hear continuous things coming out of the government like more uncertainty for the energy sector with these very nebulous changes to the environmental assessments procedure, increased taxes, things like CPP and premium increases, EI premium increases. Those are all things that incentivize growth, and that is not what the Alberta or the Canadian economy needs right now.
Okay, well, let's talk about the employment insurance situation. What should the government do there?
Well, I spoke to this on the House. I think the government has a big task there. I think that they've overcommitted themselves in terms of deficit this year. They're going to have to manage commitments that they've made while ensuring that, we don't go broke while we're doing it. With regard to employment insurance, one of the big concerns that I had was the fact that they campaigned upon raising EI premiums. I think that sends a chill through small business and people asking the question right now whether or not they can keep employees on. So I hope that they come up with a balanced approach that helps workers as they need it, but also isn't plunging the Canadian economy and the Canadian government into massive debt, and also aren't putting any sort of a chill on business growth by increased premiums.
You know that while your party was in government, the new government says the Conservative Party failed to get pipelines to Tidewater, failed to get natural resources to Tidewater, in part because the regulatory process was compromised. How do you respond to that? How do you counter that?
That's complete poppycock. I mean, I think that the Liberals understand that their ideological opposition to the energy sector is coming home to roost right now. And you'll notice that when they use that terminology, they can't quantify what it means. So when they say, well, we don't have confidence in the environmental review process, that's just ridiculous. Canada has one of the most stringent science-based arm's length review process, which we strengthened in the Responsible Resource Development Plan of 2012. That was a hallmark of our government. We put in everything from more stringent review to, penalties for people who are breaking the terms of their environmental assessments, to pipeline safety review, funding for that. What the Liberals have done with this message is say to industry that in a time of depressed commodity prices, we are putting more uncertainty on investment, and that means that more people are going to be laid off. And that is very unfortunate. It's very short-sighted, and they need to find the political will to support the energy sector rather than using this narrative to, not make a decision on energy projects. I just refuse to accept that narrative, and I think it does a disservice to anybody who's been laid off or wants to continue working in, what has been a very, very important sector for the Canadian economy writ large.
If you could, I'm hoping you could maybe in bullet point form recap your party's recent motion in the House on the Energy East Pipeline project, what you were asking the government to do, and for the Liberals, specifically the 4 Liberal MPs elected recently in Alberta, how did their vote in the House compare to what you were hearing on the hustings during the election campaign?
This motion was a statement of support for the energy sector, an acknowledgement that pipelines are the safest way to transport oil, and an acknowledgement in principle of the importance of the Energy East pipeline. You know, I've had a few people say, like, oh, it's an opposition motion, it doesn't mean anything. It sure does mean something for a government to come out and vocally support an industry. It sends a message to workers, and it sends a message to industry in terms of investment. The fact that we had 4 Liberal MPs from Alberta, whose constituents rely on this sector for their livelihood, vote against a motion like that is shameful. And one of them in Calgary, even during the election, campaigned on this, saying, I will pound on the table to support pipelines.
Who was that?
It was Canter. And when push came to shove, he did not vote for this. And that's, you know, putting your money where your mouth is. And it is shameful. I am so enraged by this. And I hope that anybody who's been affected by this in all of Canada gets equally as angry and holds the government to account on their decision to vote against that motion.
Okay. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much.
That's Michelle Rempel, Conservative Member of Parliament, Calgary Nose Hill, joining me today here on the Rob Snow Show on News Talk 580 CFRA.